Running fans, jumping fans, throwing fans, all around athletics fans, welcome to Talking in Ovals. How is everybody doing on this Monday, May 22nd of 2023? I'm Alex Cuesta. The man everyone comes to hear is over there, Dave Hyatt. What's going on, man?
Still pumped about last week's episode. I mean, that was one for the ages there, and it was just so much fun. And, the season's really starting to come into play now. We're getting some big races. We're getting some people actually running against other people, of the same caliber. Seems like people are maybe not ducking each other as much. So I'm anticipating a big finish to this season.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool seeing Christian Coleman come back and beat Noah Lyles. I thought, as much as Noah's been great for the sport, if we can add Christian into that mix with Arian Knighton and things like that could be really
Curly too.
Big. Curly too, and
in Japan.
Curly too, and there's just so many good sprinters right now, but I think people forget, especially if Christian's been out of the scene for a little while. Him and Noah had such a rivalry when they were both coming up, and Christian was the guy. People forget that it was Noah chasing Christian. So It's going to be really fun if he's come back into form and he's doing his thing. But yeah, last week's episodes were great. We had two. So we had Clayton Murphy on Thursday. We talked to Danielle Barnes, who was Danielle Toro in her, heyday, over on Monday. So we had a great double decker of shows. Before we get into all the fun stuff, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5-star, Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth if you like what you're hearing. Find us on the socials at Talking in Ovals. And I just want to stress the word of mouthing again. Really important. Anybody listening, if you know anybody that enjoys running, send them our way. They're going to like this show. But if you know someone that just enjoys hearing good stories, send them our way as well. Because what we're doing right now is archiving stories of some of the greatest runners, some casual runners, and we're doing something really cool here. So we just want to make sure that we can get as many people as possible to hear what's going on over here. So
I got a quick
go ahead, Dave.
Shout out to two runners from your alma mater at Manchester. I got to go with the short conference champion in the 100 meters, Tyrone Benjamin, running a new school record of 10.83 to win the short conference. It was supposed to be on Saturday, but rained out. So now it's a 2-day meet today and tomorrow. And also to Nick Lafredo from Manchester, going down in distance, running the 800 down at Haddonfield and running a PR of 155.86.
Yeah, it's exciting. And he broke my my classmate Andrew Dunbar's record tie in the 100. Andrew Dunbar was a short conference champion in the 1 and 200. So it's a big accomplishment right there for Ty. So yeah, we're excited there. Outside of that, we don't have any more PRs or PBs, but they'll be flowing. I'm not worried about that. It's okay to have an off week. But I want to get to this week's show, because this week's show, we're continuing with the flow of fantastic guests. This is going to be someone that's going to give us a little bit of a different perspective, because we've had a lot of athletes, we'd had a store owner, but this is going to be our first individual that is a meet director that has run meets and actually just ran an absolutely major meet over this past weekend. He is Dave Alfano. He is a doctor of physical therapy. He does work for Functional Running, and he's also the co-founder of the Trials for Miles Racing. What's going on, Dave?
Not too much, guys. Greatly appreciate you having me. I have to say that's I listened to a bunch of podcasts, and that's the hypest intro song. Saw me bop in my head. That was cool stuff. Definitely don't change that. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I love, when I was looking for intro songs, I was like, what reminds me of just like the Olympics on steroids? And I was like, this is it.
At the end of a work day.
It's been going strong. It's been going strong for 40 episodes, so we're going to keep it.
Yeah, we're doing our thing.
41 now.
Yeah, 41 now. That's crazy. We're almost up to a year. That's gonna be a good little landmark. So, Dave, I first want to talk about what we talk with all of our guests. We have our first segment that we always like to go. You were a runner, like many of our other guests that were on. When did you get the spark that running was going to be something that you could do for the rest of your life, something that you enjoy? Because we all have a different time when we figured out that we actually like running. When was that for you?
Totally. Yeah. The one thing I really appreciated my parents doing growing up is exposing me to everything: baseball, basketball, tennis. And I thought I was going to be an NBA superstar, but unfortunately I was, I was like a 5'8" short white dude, couldn't touch the rim. And when I would hop into races, whether they were like local 5Ks or we had a little cross country league here in West Orange, I excelled at that. And I think that's likely how most people find their way into running, at least at the high school level. It's something that they're fairly good at compared to the other things that they're in. So yeah, I think breaking 5, which I know is nothing these days, especially freshmen nowadays are running super fast, but I broke 5 freshman year of high school. And that for me was like, all right, I should just quit basketball, quit soccer, and see where this sport can take me. And many years later, not running a whole lot, but still very much involved. So I guess that was kind of like my aha moment, the sub 5 barrier as a 14-year-old.
It's funny you mentioned about how, like sub 5, like that's not a big deal. And we had on my buddy a few weeks ago, Adam Vest, and he brought up something that I think Dave and I agree with. All of us sitting here, most of the people on this show, we have such a skewed vision of the sport and times and things like that. And like we sit around here and go, yeah, sub 5, sub 5's trash, when not realizing that like 80% of the world population can't break 5 minutes in a mile at any point in their life. So it's like, while we're sitting there going, yeah, that's awful, like it is still a ridiculously fast milestone that, I'll never forget. I had 2 football players. I'll mention them. Anthony Palmiato and Ryan Casey over at my high school. I was a runner and I played football too as well. And at one point there was after school and there was like, how hard is it to run sub 5? And I'm like, you guys have no idea. Like, and this is at that point I was already a 4:30 miler. Like, so I was like, good. And they're just like, let's try. I'm like, okay, I'm going to bring you doing straight 75s and let's see what you could do. When I tell you I got to 800 and they're just like, are we seriously have to do 2 more laps? I'm like, yeah. And then they stopped. Like the people don't realize how difficult it actually is. So, but your story's similar. A lot of people, when they find success in running is when they start to like it. So now from there, I want you to walk me down memory lane because, this is a fun part of the show for Dave and I, is when we get to let you go and reach into the depths of things you haven't thought about for years. So what were some of the best memories that you had from when you started running in high school, through college, and then even bring it into what you're currently doing, because you're still making memories in the running field?
Yeah, no doubt. Memories in high school were always with the relays. Anytime you could bring a relay together and win something, whether it was like the county level or the conference level, I seem to remember, because those guys I'm still friends with, and those are the types of things that I'll remember the most. Personally, I don't know how Clayton Murphy was at his state meet in high school and some of these other guests, but I would always blow up at the big meets because I was just a head case. That's just the truth of the matter. So like all my best races came in races that I don't want to say they didn't matter, like winning a county championship or a district championship, whatever you call it at the high school level. It's really cool, but those were like my best memories, even in college, winning a conference championship. I just couldn't get it done, but not to be corny or cliche, but for me, it was definitely meeting kind of the core group of friends that I have now from my high school track team. And probably same thing with college is the people that I still stay in touch with and meeting them for the first time and, hammering out like 18-mile runs on a Sunday when everyone else was sleeping in because they were hungover. Like those are the kind of things that I really enjoyed. If I could go back and do it again, would I be running 80 miles, whatever it was? I don't know. But yeah, those are the types of things. And then in terms of like memories, like in this new era of my professional life, I mean, there's no way that I'm going to forget things like when we put on a meet in Texas during the pandemic, and Emma Coburn and Ellie Perrier and all of these superstars showed up, and I'm sitting on the track just like, I cannot believe that they're here at our little meet that we organized with 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, that was the first that I don't know how long this Trials of Miles thing will go, but that was the one memory where I mean, we'll never forget it because we went from like 0 to 100 because the athletes didn't have any other options. But yeah. I'd call that my most memorable, kind of like new professional life thing. So kind of in a few different directions.
What's cool is that so many of our guests say that some of their best memories were those relay races, because there's nothing better than getting 3 of your buddies and doing something together. I remember my favorite memories in high school were all at the Penn relays or the state relays. There's nothing better than doing it because track's not really that much. It's a way to bring a team aspect into the sport. Like you are dependent on 3 other people. So I just think it's cool that so many of our guests state how important that it was to be on those relays and how their high school teammates are still some of their best friends to this day.
And you know what? It's funny because I could say I personally don't know like the individual championships or accolades that you actually won, Dave, right? And the fact that like that's not even like the top of the memory. And it's funny, like Dave said, like not only just you, but we've had like the Olympians that have come on, the national record holders and things like that. And, they've talked about their races because we've asked them about them, right? But for the most part, they say the same thing. They say, going to Penn Relays and doing this. Now, I think the question that most people want to know, especially runners want to know is, what was your favorite Saturday night drink to re-drink Sunday morning while you were doing the long runs and sweating it out? Because every college runner knew that Sunday morning long run, that beginning, you were sweating out and you were tasting all the things you drank the night before. Or were you not a drinker?
And the way that we did it in college was I was like super straight edge for like 10 to 12 weeks. We'd get to our regional meet. It was a 10K. And then that night for a week straight, we would do what we call Fun Week. And that was, every night it was a new theme. We would drink our faces off. Usually 3 or 4 days in, we wouldn't want to, we'd bow out. But no, during the season, I was straight edge. I was too straight edge, to be honest with you. I probably could have used a beer or two and loosened up. But I was drinking water and some type of electrolyte drink and like getting in bed early. I was like locked in. I really wanted to be a good runner on the high school and college level. And, some people may have said that I ended up running 8:07 for 3K. I ran 3:50 for 15, wow. 14:26 for 5K, blowing the F up. And I felt like I could have done so much more. And, I ended up getting into coaching for a little bit. And I think those life lessons of like, it's just running and it's, don't take it so seriously, which I know is not easy on the pro level. Yeah. So long-winded response to say I was drinking the stuff you probably should have been drinking the night before, right? Just getting, being hydrated and whatnot.
So listen here, kids, don't be like Hyatt and I, who were drinking Saturday night and re-drinking Sunday morning. Be like Dave Alfano here, and
because we didn't run 350,
we were not
350 or 1426.
Drink a beer or two,
Hey, hops aren't bad for you. Have
I always
or two of wine, something nice.
Even Coughlin always said he'd have 1 or 2 beers every year the night before the Millrose games, and it just helped him calm down. So everybody's different. Everybody has their own way of doing it. Some people say you don't have to drink at all. Some people don't. It's find what works for you and just go with that.
We also don't promote underage drinking, but we're also not idiots. We know what goes on, but we do not promote it here as coaches, parents, former athletes, all the above that, we have done. So, you did that, you do your running career. Now you're jumping into, trials and miles. You talk about your start over there in, with that COVID meet essentially going on and all these superstars. Did that kind of click to you? Just not only the fact that athletes were hungry during COVID, but just how hungry athletes in track and field are to just have other meets to go to not just be kind of structured into the diamond and continental gold and those types of things, just to have something to go to maybe let your hair down, fun, run fast, but have a good time while doing it. Was that kind of something apparent?
And especially here in the States, not to have to travel.
Yep.
Totally. I mean, the meet that I was referring to earlier that January, when I say that there was nothing on the calendar, I mean, this is 7-8 months post the world shutting down. I mean, there was nothing. We caught wind from a few athletes in the New York City area that we were friends with that were running on a high level. And they just said, we're training for nothing. And how Trials of Miles actually started, not to bore you with our history, but we were doing a bunch of like virtual head-to-head competitions because frankly, there were no races to do in person. And that's sort of where we got our start, where you'd race in like a bracket style tournament. You'd run with someone either on another side of the country or maybe someone in your city. And that's when it turned into the in-person racing. Once USATF started to like allow the meets to happen, it involved like crazy COVID testing and whatnot. But that specifically that Texas meet, there was just nothing else in town. And so we were like, yeah, this is going to be an Olympic qualifier, Olympic trials qualifier meet. Like, we didn't know what the heck we were doing, but athletes were like, yeah, that's what I want. I need that, now 2023, athletes have a lot of options. I mean, maybe if you're like a sub elite, if you're like a 402, 403 miler, maybe your options are a little bit more limited, but if you're one of the top Americans, I think you have plenty of options. And I actually think that that's kind of a problem with the sport, is that you just have all these meets going on, random meets, and nobody knows what they mean, and nobody knows how to follow, and there's no like sequencing. So to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I think that was a good opportunity at the time. Maybe Austin maybe Austin is not the perfect location because it was very, very hot, but yeah, certainly, like, creating more opportunities is great. But like, what if you have like 30 opportunities in a month span? Where so I don't know.
So how many trials of miles have you done to this date so far?
A lot. We've done a lot of virtual stuff. We've done some pro meets. We've done some high school meets. We just did the New Balance National Indoor Meet. We've done a lot of community races. Last summer, we did 8 cities for the Tracksmith 5K kind of Twilight Tour. And that was really fun because, you could be a 30-minute 5K runner and you like really felt like you belonged, and you had a pacer and you were having people cheer for you. So we've been really fortunate to like hit it on every level. And we've even done some trail stuff. We've done some road stuff, just trying to like figure out what the heck we are. So yeah, we've been kind of all over the place.
So I want to talk to you about this meet this Friday that you just had. I thought that was an amazing concept. Kind of tell us how that all came about, like with the, $8,000 for first place. Because if you win Diamond League, you're only getting $10,000. So to be able to offer that much money to the winner of a race is a big deal. And that's why you had the athletes there that were there. So kind of tell us the story of how that meet came about and how you were able to generate that interest and to get the athletes that you got.
Totally. So New York City, I know now that there's like a Grand Prix meet in June, but New York City a few years ago, there wasn't really like a quote unquote elite meet. And being from the New Jersey, New York City area, we wanted to bring something there. So this is actually the 3rd year that we've done this meet. And every year we try to change something to make, to see what works and what doesn't work. To us, and this was really my partner's idea, Cooper Knowlton, we were thinking, how do we get this meet to buzz more than just like, your traditional track meet? And, the one thing with bronze level status, which is the IAAF, like the classification system, is there's a little bit more leeway with bronze level. And maybe after this interview, someone will hear it and they'll change it. But it's kind of up to the meet director's discretion on how they want to use the $25,000. And Cooper was like, 800 out of 0, 8,000, like boom, like maybe we could get some big athletes to throw that amount of money. And I think that there's something to that concept. You watch UFC, you watch golf, you watch tennis, they have these big prize purse main event type situations. And I'm not saying $8,000 is a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money in the track world, but in the grand scheme of things, it's like, it's a lot of money in track. I get it. We threw it out there and we said, let's see what happens. Maybe we won't get anyone recognizable, but we're going to have 9 or 18 athletes like fighting over $8,000. And like, we're not paying a pacer, we're like, I don't know if you ended up watching Bryce Hoppel's meet. One of the teams ended up like sending their guy out, and we didn't plan that. It just sort of happened. And like, hey, he was fairly in the race, like do what you want to do. But, that was kind of the concept. The 800s at that meet always do well. If you traditionally want to run a 5K or a 10K, you don't go to the East Coast. You go out to the West Coast, which is a whole nother thing, like the whole time trialing thing. But that event always does well. So we're like, let's do it. Let's see what happens. And like the names started rolling in, and we got Bryce Hoppel, and we were like, Bryce Hoppel's pretty recognizable. Yeah. And we had a couple other athletes that wanted to run, but were just a little beat up. I mean, that list that ended up coming to the race was not even the entire list of those who we would have. But yeah, we have to say, like, the buzz that came from the whole $8,000 concept, I think it worked. I mean, you do have people that are still going to complain. Like, Bryce Hoppe only ran 146. Like, that's slow. But like, for anyone who was in that stadium,
it's East Coast. It was nighttime. It was cool. It was a little breezy. Like,
and they competed.
And they raced.
Competed to the race.
They raced, and that was my favorite part about that. Now, Ajay is a monster. But Bryce Hoppe, with 100 meters to go, there was a run. Shocking. It was an exciting race, and the fact that you had an earlier section and there was kind of like a time standard that was posted, and it put a little pressure on the faster section. I don't know if it was perfect, but I think that the response was, we got a couple emails from some of the 800 runners in the B section, and they were like, I've never been part of something like where there were stakes, where there was something, obviously outside of like a national championship. So yeah. I think that format can definitely work if done correctly.
I thought it was great. And, you also had like, in terms of helping to build the sport, there were races for high school kids. You had, Bowler from Del Barton, and he ran 406, in a high school mile. You had a pro 1500. So like there was definitely a good mix of high school kids who got to watch some of their idols on that pro level, which can only help, future this sport and make it better.
So as a meet director, I'm curious because we've been throwing around a lot of ideas of like how to grow the sport, right? How to get casuals involved. Because I think that's the meal ticket, right? Like you were able to do $8,000 because you were given a certain lump sum, right? What's it going to take to try and create, like right now, like Trials of Miles is established. You guys are an established thing. What would it take to kind of create an official circuit where you have the TOM track and field circuit? Here's 8 races. And we always talk about contracting athletes. Like, let's get contracted athletes that have to show up to these 8 meets so we could start promoting them. As a person that runs meets, what would it kind of take to do that? And is there ever a possibility of breaking away from the USATF? Because Clayton Murphy brought it up last week. He said there's no business for our national body to be also our meet directors and our major meet people. There's no other sport that does it that way. The PGA is not the US golf. The UFC is not US MMA. They're outside of that and, the major promotion. So what would it take for like a company like yours to say, listen, we don't care what distinction you give us, bronze, whatever. We're running our meets. We're giving our prize money and, make it so big that you have to include it in the rankings type of deal. Because I know the rankings are a big factor to why everyone's beholden to USATF and World Athletics.
Totally. Everything that Clayton Murphy is saying is totally valid. What would it take to do? I think it would certainly take a pretty large investment. Someone that believed in trying to approach the sport a little bit differently. I think a circuit is a brilliant idea, something that my partner and I chat about quite often. You create a circuit, the athletes have to run X amount of races. You mentioned 8, maybe it's an 8-city thing. You have to run 6 or 7. There's not only rankings, but there's Eric Holt is 7-1 against, someone else.
Yeah.
You could follow it. What, in my opinion, to make something like that really work, you have to have a community and a high school component to it. I think the night at the 10Ks, the other night, if you watch that, there were open heats throughout the night. And a lot of those people likely stayed and continue to watch. I mean, there's no doubt that having a food component, having a drink component, all that stuff is all great. But I think above all, there has to be an emphasis on racing. And the track is fun, but I'd like to think that you could bring that out onto the roads. I'd like to think you could bring it out onto a short closed circuit loop like they've done in cycling. So you could sit there with your beer and you could see those athletes come by 7 or 8 times and you could see the leaders switching and you're sitting there with your beer and you're watching some guy win an awesome race, a guy that's 0-6 against the guy that was second, and he just beat him, and you're having a great time, and you want to see what happens in that 8th event, because that 8th event, if that person wins, they're going home with $25,000. I'm just making this up, yeah. But in a really cool location that hasn't been done before. Maybe it's track road, maybe it's a combo of of cross country. But I just, and I think this is what initially got us all connected. I just think that maybe there's a time and place for like running fast. Like I'm a distance fan. If I go watch some guy try to break the world record with a pacer, like that will excite me. But ultimately, it's not going to excite 99.9% of anyone else who doesn't really know the sport. So I think that like everything Clayton is saying is absolutely right for an organization to come in, have a solid backing, and just create a really cool circuit where athletes can earn money. They don't have to focus on times every single meet. It doesn't have to be about time. Like even the 15 at our meet, we had a pacer, but like the way things shook up with 500 meters out, everyone was still together and it turned into like an insane finish. And, you know, if you could somehow bottle that up into like last thing I'll say is like, even take the guy who won, John Rudnicki. Like, what if you want to watch him run again? Like, what is that win that he just won our meet? Like, what does that mean? Like, okay, he won the meet. Like, did he win any money? Did that earn him points? Like, what's his record like? Is he going to the playoffs? Like, I just think these are all things that like have to carefully be thought out to present it in a way that's not like, all right, and we're out here at the Grand Prix and here's a pacer sending our guys out, going to try to run 340. It's just like, it's just not working.
Yeah.
No. And so, and also Sarah Slattery brought up many moons ago now, it seems like forever ago that we had Sarah on, but she brought up that she believes that sports betting would actually help the sport. And I brought up, and, we talked about the difficulties of people not knowing them, right? And you're talking about how we can know them. Put it on FanDuel, but I also say that we should do in our sport a horse racing style, win, place, or show. You could see how these last records are. You can do the head-to-head thing that you have there. You can see their world ranking, the United States ranking, and things like that, their PRs, and then kind of bet that way. And then also Eric Sawinski brought up here about putting local sponsors, allowing people to have local sponsors. So, decorate the whole back of the jersey with the local sponsors, get 2,000 here, 5,000 here, whatever. And would that be something that you would be open to? Because as a meet director, that has to be something that you run into, right? With sponsorships and who's clashing here and what is allowed here and what can go on. So logistically, how would something for you as a director with betting and with different sponsorships, how would that come into play for you in trying to organize something like this?
I've tried. Our little tiny cockroach company. We've tried to. We've reached out to every sports book, time and time again. It's going to take someone with a little more influence. I know they got close to it with the Boston Marathon. It seems like the pieces were in place to bet on that race, and someone pulled out. I think it's really close to happening, and there's no doubt that gambling is going to bring a new element to track. I mean. I personally haven't gambled since college because it's easy to get hooked to those things. But someone's going to watch the race and there's going to be some stakes on it for them. And I think it'll be a huge game changer. And in terms of the logos, I mean, these athletes are dying like to get paid. They're Clayton Murphy, I would imagine, has a decent contract, but you go a step below. And these guys have nothing. I mean,
Robbie Andrews and Eric Sawinski are not sponsored. Could you imagine those two guys not being sponsored? Like, it's incredible.
I think the bigger issue is that, if you're Nike or Adidas or I don't know, whoever, like, why are you going to throw out all this money for an athlete who's going on a live stream to be watched by, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people who are already in the sport? Like, there's just no value for them. Do I think like the smaller sponsorship around the jerseys can help supplement, a 336, 1,500 meter athlete who's like just trying to survive month to month? Yeah, totally. And I think that it's kind of ridiculous to limit that to one sponsor. But yeah, I think opening up the sponsorship tiers is one thing. We've never had any conflict with sponsor. I think we're too small. We haven't faced any situations like that. But I think the more sponsorships, the merrier. Take the bib, do away with the bib, and just throw your sponsor logo on there. But yeah, I'm all in favor of gambling. I think anyone who watches track is.
So here's a question with the bib thing. Why can't we just give everyone a little pin to put on their shirt and just let it act as the bib, have the number implanted into it. Like Elon Musk is quite literally about to have things implanted into our necks, right? With Neuralink. Why can't track and field get rid of a freaking wax paper thing with numbers on it and just go to a little pin, put it on the top side, and just the bib?
I think it's nostalgic though.
It is.
People love having the bib.
Who loves that?
Hanging on their wall.
I think that
I have bibs still.
No, you're totally spot on. I think we do a really good job of designing good-looking bibs. This is the Pacer bib for the Tracksmith Twilight Mile, and they are really pretty. And I do think people like it, and it's great advertising for the company. But at the Olympic level, it's like, especially they've had some years where the bibs kind of like took over the shirt. I don't know, but yeah, I think there is a nostalgia to it. I think you're spot on with that.
So, what do you feel about like how hard it is for the average person to watch a track meet? Like they're all over the place, whether it's Flow Track or Peacock. Like it's. I feel like if they did have a circuit and they had a television contract and people would know where to go, you could just be surfing through the channels. Oh, there's track on that. You have to know where every meet is, what time, what stream, what platform. I do think that is a big hindrance in trying to get more fans out to watch.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I personally, as a track fan, I will look and see when Fred Curley is running, and I'll see it's behind a paywall, and I won't watch it. And I'm a track fan. Now start to think about people that aren't track fans. It's like you're just creating walls.
Yeah.
And then I sort of was thinking your question was one thing before it went in that direction. Like, what about when the meet is on and you do have somebody that's not watching track, and you're like, okay, see, this person is jumping, and now they're on the track. Okay, what's going on the track now? Okay, I see
it all the time.
Yeah, I see people are wearing Nike. I see people are wearing Adidas. Like, are they on the same team? Like, what am I watching here? How do I what does this race mean? And then the race is over and you're like, okay, I'm waiting. What's going on? 5-6 minutes passes. So I think it's like it's when it actually is on and it is in front of you. That's one issue, the way it's presented. But then, to watch it is, the one thing that my partner and I believe very strongly in is make it as accessible as possible. Friday's meet was on YouTube. It was, I'll be honest with you, it was a scale back production. We are a tiny company with a tiny budget, but you were able to watch all the races and it was free and you could do what you want with it. And I'm starting to see a little bit of a movement with more meets that are going on YouTube. I think there's just this the New Balance National Indoor Meet went on YouTube and the numbers were like out of this world. There were like 400,000 unique like people that did not watch it more, and that speaks volumes. If you were to have thrown that on a channel that people don't have, I don't think the numbers would have been what they were. So make it as accessible as possible. If you're going to pay the production costs already, I don't know. Maybe it's like the old guard that like, oh, this is on ESPN Plus or this is on NBC. Like, this is legit. Like, why can't it be legit and be on YouTube?
NBC coverage is. I mean, we talked about it last week with Clayton Murphy. Like, he said that he couldn't watch the World Champs because there's just so much fluff. Like, they don't show the actual races and they show them out of order. We see the first minute of the 10K, maybe 2 minutes in the middle and the end, and like, just, it's all cover stories. They don't show the meets. And his big thing was they don't give you any information on the athletes pre-race. He wanted to have like an announcer as they're doing warm-ups, interview them pre-race, find out what, how they're feeling, what they're doing, just to garner more interest for the average person to actually watch and say, hey, this person, wow, they got sick last week and now that they're lining up for this race. Just anything to just promote it more.
Clayton Murphy and Alex Andre are definitely thinking outside the box with the way that they're presenting things, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Clayton was mic'd up. I think it was last year, and I watched that and I called my partner and I'm like, that's really cool. Alex Andre specifically, he was actually at the Friday meet and I think everything he's doing is just great. But again, that stuff is really cool, but it all comes back to like well, how, like, is that going to get new fans? I'm not sure. Are current fans going to watch that and go like, wow, like that's really cool that Clayton thinks that, does that? Like, I think it cannot hurt to open up your world to people that want to know like what's going on, besides the fact that you're stepping on a track and you're going through in 51 seconds and you're trying to run, X time. But yeah, to your point about the 10K, and I'm a distance fan, 10K is a brutal race to watch. I mean, you're going to really have to like put people that like strap people into a seat and peel their eyes open to have that don't watch track.
I'm going to debate that though, because I watch golf. I watch NASCAR. People watch baseball. They're boring as shit. Okay. They are not fun unless you like it, right? But how do you get those people? You get someone that's watching it. You walk in, you're like, what are you doing watching cars going in ovals, dude? Like, this is 3 hours long. And then you sit there and they start explaining to you the intricacies, right? They're going 180 miles an hour. They're an inch away from each other. When they pit, that's a big team thing. Where is that? And it's kind of explained too. You have great people in a NASCAR race announcing and talking about this. In golf, you see someone do a hit, it's a hit. Okay, all of a sudden they go into like the science of it. This is the thing. This is what they had to do, the torque. This is what they go through. We don't have that in track. We're not sitting there and explaining, okay, these guys are going through in 440 in this 10K every mile right now. What is a 440 mile? This is what we can compare it to, and showing that type of thing there. So that's my thing. Like, we can certainly make a 10K interesting. At worst, if you're watching it at like a decent college level, you're watching a half an hour race in the guys, right? That's at worst. People can sit there for a half an hour and watch a race. We can do it in so many other things. We can make it work in that type of setting. So like, while the 10K can be brutal, there are ways I think that we can make it so that even the fan that enjoys running, that might look at it and go, oh, all right, let me wait till the last 1K, 2K. That's going to be interesting, right? We can make it interesting throughout the race and talk about different individuals there, not just, well, they're moving up in the pack. They were just in fifth, and now look, they're making their move, and they're known for kicking. Like, no, that's stupid. We don't care about that. But we can have a little more information on these runners.
No, I hear you. I think the thing about NASCAR is like so much can go. Like, there's so many variables. A crash that wipes a person out, a flat tire, a person drops from first to eighth, and it's like, like, oh my God, like, can they make that pit stop quick enough to get back in the race? I mean, to your point, marathons are like generally very exciting for people to watch, but the only difference is the New York City Marathon, the Boston Marathon, Chicago Marathon, there's so much on the line. I mean, these races are so prestigious. So for a 10K,
do an elbow zone. They could throw elbows from this point to this point. That would make it interesting. It's like legal to throw bows openly and just have guys strategically throwing bows on like the back straight every lap.
My idea for a 10K is start with what is a 10K? I have 25 laps? 20,
yeah.
Yeah. So start with, I don't know, 50 people, or start with 25 people, and every 200 meters or every 400 meters, last lap gets eliminated. So every lap, you're going to see people in that last place try to sprint so that they're not that to me, I could see someone sitting there for 30 minutes going like,
go. And there's the betting aspect.
They go and they grab their drink. They get up.
You could do live FanDuel bets on who's going to be last on that lap.
But that's like, I don't know. That's just a random example I just thought of. But that's something that like will break up the monotony. The positions matter. It really matters. And I think you could keep like, I don't know. I just feel like there's ways to present some of these races, and like, you have to preserve track. You have to preserve the legacies of, Prefontaine in the 5K and I'm trying to think of 10K, even like Gebre Selassie. Like, the Olympics is the Olympics. People are going to watch. The 10K is going to have high viewership because it's exciting. Can the Americans,
Grant Fisher,
on the East Africans, like, that's exciting. But take a 10K in March out in California, and I love. And by the way, like, major props to Jesse and everything he's done with Sound Running. Like, if it wasn't for him, there would be no real competitive options. But like a race like that, there's not a lot on the line. It's all about time, and that's what I'm coming back to is like, you get in line, you hold on, and you just try to finish it out. And I think that if we could change up that format, I think it could get new eyeballs.
So a question for you for something that I brought up a few times on the show, and it's cool to bring it to a race director. I brought up the idea of doing like your qualifiers, your trials on a day, not really aired, maybe put on like a Flow Track live stream, right, for the diehards to watch, and then do just finals, maybe split up a few days for like field, sprints, distance, and only have finals. Because I feel like a big problem with track and field is it takes freaking forever to run a meet. They are very long, they're monotonous. And again, like you said, they're confusing, right? But it would be easy to couple like, okay, you're looking at sprints here. You're looking at the 1, 2, 4, 8, and maybe the 15, because 15 is a sprint at the pro level, right? Maybe. And then you go up and it's like, okay, here's distance day. Here's your steeple, 5, 10K. That's all you're getting. But it's all finals. So even you could do men and women. It's all fast. You're going to see really good stuff those days. And for the track junkies like us, go in a corner and watch the stream to get the qualifiers, right? You can go watch those. We don't care about those, but you're getting the best of the best, the people that qualified, your top 8 only in the sprints here. Would that be something that, again, how difficult would that be to do, to convince athletes to come out and do that with the chance of like not being on TV or things like that, or being featured, and how to do a production like that for multiple days?
Yeah, totally. I assume that this question is related to like maybe like a US champs or like I don't know, an NCAA or some type of championship.
Kind of like the circuit idea. When I had the circuit idea, like doing a circuit in that way, where
right. The only difference is the circuit wouldn't have any trials. You would just have people, you know, and those.
So what I would envision for a circuit, and something my partner and I talk about, is I think it would just be one race. I think what you're stating is a good idea. And like one of the things that we're doing with this New Balance Nationals outdoor meet is like we have these windows at the end of each night where like all the top seeded races for that day are like the mile, the seeded heat of the mile, the seeded heat of the SMR, the seeded heat of the 2, whatever it is. Yeah. And it's just like intro, fireworks, like they come out, they run their race, they're interviewed, bam, next track, seeded. And it's like, I don't know how it's going to turn out. I mean, we'll see.
But that's great. Just action-packed, action. Just fast races, fast people, fast. Here's a record. Here's a this. Here's a that. I think that would be great.
Yeah, the way that the indoor meet worked, in some cases, we had a bunch of fast heats together, and like the arena was like super loud. It was really, really exciting. Versus like really awesome race and an hour and a half of downtime.
They're
and really
putting their hurdles on the track now.
Yeah, totally. So I think that having a really, really tight, exciting window, you know, Friday was not perfect. We had a beer mile relay, which was okay.
I saw that.
Cool. We had a chase down race that completely flopped.
Now the only thing I didn't like was that it was a non-alcoholic beer mile, right?
Yeah, well, you know, it's not easy to get a beer.
O'Doul's mile.
getting a New Year, and by the way, Icon Stadium is awesome to work with, but getting an alcoholic permit to
correct, yes, I'm sure,
is not super easy. But
yeah, it's still cool just to have that event, you know, like to have people chugging beers and then running a lap, a lap. It's cool.
I don't know if that's the answer, but we were just like, let's try it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think like outside the box ideas like that, you know, maybe a beer mile relay is not like the most outside the box idea, but you know, certainly like the chase down thing we tried, like they do in baseball, you know, the what's his name?
The freeze.
The freeze.
Tries to chase someone down who gets
the freeze. Yep.
The freeze and
freeze. We tried that. My partner recruited someone way too fast who like it wasn't even close. Like, come on, man, you gotta at least like, I don't know, maybe it should have been 350 versus 300. But
next time I'm calling out, Nick Simmons needs to come out of retirement to run in your beer mile.
Yeah.
There we go. Let's get him.
That would be no complaints on that end. No, Nick does really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But how do you bring that stuff that Nick does? How do you like bring that into the, you know, the people are just very resistant to change, you know, changing the way things are being done. And I think you're absolutely right. There has to be someone that comes in and creates whatever it is, a circuit or a league or a you know, 3 events a year that have these massive prize
majors. Yeah, some majors.
A major, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Like in golf, yeah. And I think it's like the athletes have to run. You know, like we love Sydney McLaughlin to death here. She's from our state.
Jersey girl.
But she hasn't run since August.
And she's teasing us with June 9th now in Paris, which when that gun goes off, I don't care if she lines up, if she gets gets set. The moment that gun goes off at this point is when I'll believe Sydney McLaughlin's running.
And she's going to run fast. I mean, she's amazing, but Clayton actually called her out last week. It was like, this has to stop. Like, we have to get these people to run races. That's the only way that we're going to help make the sport bigger, because people know who she is. She's in she's on TV in every New Balance commercial. We need people like that to run and compete.
Sydney is the one athlete of like maybe two or three that like I can ask my parents, my wife, like any of them, I think will know who she is. So I agree. And she's in a position where she can kind of choose her. I'm not saying that like we need to come up with rules to make her race more. Like she's free to do. I mean, she's winning at the highest of levels.
Oh, absolutely. She's amazing.
But I don't know. I don't know that whole.
Well, you know what though? LeBron James is under contract. LeBron James has been the best basketball player for 20 years, but the man is under contract. He has to play basketball. There is no, well, my coach said it's okay. No, you'll be fine if that happens enough times in the NBA. Right. So there needs, and I think that's the biggest bane of our sport, right? We don't have an overarching body. I want Trials and Miles to eventually be that overarching body. I think that'll be dope, but we don't have a contract system. So yes, actually, I kind of disagree. Yes, we do need to have a system to force these athletes to run, unless you are actually injured, which is why we need injury reports. But that would only be possible if we had a league. Now, I want to jump back to a league real quick. Dave constantly talks about this, and he's completely right. Icon Stadium is a track dedicated outdoor facility. How many others are there around the world, around this country, that can actually hold a pro meet that is track dedicated, that isn't on a high school or college campus? Outside of Icon, maybe there's a few in Cali that I don't know about, but like I can't think of another one off the top of my head that isn't Oregon, that isn't in an SEC school, that isn't like, one of those things. Like, that has to be a challenge as somebody who wants to bring, meets to people. I think that in order to get a circuit, we'd have to get some more of those facilities like Icon in other places.
As opposed to doing it like on like University of Texas or Drake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Mount Sac, I guess Mount Sac also counts. Yeah.
But I guess my follow-up question is like, why, like track's track, it's a sport, you run in a circle, you go in a certain direction, but like, why does it always have to be on a track? Why couldn't the circuit be on a track one day, be on a road the next day, be on, a cross-country course, maybe not a cross-country course. I don't know.
Would that be too hard for fans to follow? Because one of the general things, like UFC's in an octagon, golf is on golf courses, football's on a football field, boxing's in a arena. Like, we might be able to branch off and do like, Trials and Miles track circuit here. If you're a fan of pure track, throwing, jumping, here you are. Now here's the Trials and Miles road racing circuit. If that's not as much your bag, here's your road racing. Like, I feel like there needs to be that sort of separation, because then we're already confusing casuals as it is, because why are we going from dead sprinters to guys running a steeple, jumping over things and falling in water? And then you're going to now throw a road at them and they're going to be like, wait a minute, what are we watching? So I feel like there needs to be a little bit of that separation there, which I like it. But like, we're running junkies. We'll watch anything with people moving their legs fast. But, I feel like the goal has to be the casuals at this point.
No, I think you're right. And there are no circuits. I don't think that exists right now. I don't think there's a road circuit, no matter what organization claims that there is. It's not a real road circuit. It's not a real track circuit. And it just comes back to like, what's next? How do I follow this? Like, what's at stake? Yeah. When the $8,000 800s, like, there was something at stake. People know what $8,000 means, and
real money.
And that's and if you can really, outside of the Olympics and the World Champs, really put something at stake, and money is the easiest one, but maybe it's like take soccer. Like, if you win your league in the D division, you bump up to the C division or the B, or you then go to the Champions League A. There's so like that's that's one of the reasons why one of the Ryan Reynolds
Wrexham. Yeah, welcome to the Wrexham one. Yep.
like he put them on a platform, created an awesome presentation. I mean, soccer is soccer, but and that team ended up winning, right? Didn't they get bumped up?
They bumped up. They're in the Premier. They're out of the Championship League. They're in the Premier.
Totally. So much at stake. Like the whole story, everything about it is just like.
Or even, say if you win X amount of races in this circuit, you get a automatic bid to the U.S. Nationals, or
or to the circuit championship, where you're now going to race for 25K instead of 8K. But again, something real. So here's your 8K that you won. Now you automatically get a bid to 25K. Real money that a track athlete does not get to see on a usual basis.
And the thing that like really drives me crazy is if you're going to create a circuit or you're going to call something a circuit, make it consistent. Make all the races, make the branding the same. Make the like if you just I'm just making this up. The Tampa Bay 5K is going to be the circuit like it's different than that 10K one and that 20K one. It just doesn't flow. It's hard to follow. It's like Hillary Bohr won $50,000. I don't know if you saw that at the 10-mile champs. He broke like an American record, and like, oh my God, like nobody knew about it. Like it just drives me crazy seeing that stuff. And just like, I feel like it's just done in a very like lazy kind of way.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you. You and I first kind of met on Facebook. Our friend Eddie Baines posted something about the 4x mile at Penn Relays, and you loved it. I had the other approach because I didn't like how the anchor legs, they all just kind of brought everyone back in the race, and it came down to a sit and kick. So from talking to other people since then, I'm kind of on the fence now. I see both sides. So where do you stand with and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, as opposed to the actual racing of a race, or the whole idea now that everything has to be a time trial and pace and everything has to be super, super fast? Do you think that we are losing a sense of racing, like me versus you versus that, like rather than it's all just, I don't care if I get 7th place, but I ran my PR by 3 seconds. Do you think that is starting to become more relevant than actual winning the event?
Yeah. Well, that 4x mile finish was sick. I mean,
it was entertaining. Yes. I think we just wanted to get,
though. It was manufactured.
I just wanted to, I think I was just like, there's teams there. Like we can see the first ever sub 16.
Totally.
Like 5 teams who can actually do it. And then the first 3 legs do the job. And then it's like, oh, we're going to sit. Now listen, kudos to Nova, that they came out top. Like they always seem to do at Penn Relays every year. But I think I was just hoping, Washington has 8 guys who've broken 4. Like it's right there. So, but you did make a very good argument. I wouldn't call it an argument. It was more of a debate. And I do see both sides. And I do think we are getting away from that racing component. People are happy getting 4th or 5th place, but just running fast. So I'm just curious, like where you think we are heading in this sport in terms of that.
I have pretty strong opinions on this. I think time trialing and distance running is absolutely killing that side of the sport. And I think distance running and sprinting, for them to work, inevitably have to be like 2 separate things. I just don't. They're 2 different sports. In my opinion, they're very different. I think there's a time and a place to like challenge the limits of the human body. I think like world records are meant to be broken, and I applaud groups of athletes going after it. But the way that a lot of these contracts are structured is you have time bonuses if you run. If you run a 3:51 mile, you get a bonus. If you run a 3:36, you go to the world championships. So everything is predicated on time. And if you see an awesome race like our 1500 the other night, but the time is slow, distance fans complain about it. They're like, that was so slow. This sucks. And it's like, it was like such an awesome race. And like, no knock on any specific meet directors, but like you see these distance runners going out west, they sit in an empty stadium, or they run in an empty stadium, and they get in line, and there's a pacemaker, and they run these ridiculously fast times. And ultimately, outside of the 5,000 to 10,000, distance running fans in this country that really follow the sport, no one else cares. And I think that like for example, if we didn't have a pacemaker for our 15, if we didn't set up a race to be fast, none of these athletes would come. And that really speaks to the state of the sport. And now with some of the, I mean, you guys might feel differently, but with some of the spike technology, times are being run so fast right now that like contracts are making these absurd time bonuses if you want to run fast, and they're almost like doing away with them. So like the question becomes like, well, where's your place then as a distance runner? You know, if you're a 340, 1500 guy, like what do you do? Are you like, do you just have to go run 335 or else your career is over? Like, well, what if you're Eric Holt and you do run 335 and you're still unsponsored? Like, it's not a winning formula. And you know, if you start to peel this even further, there's a lot going on in the track world that's inhibiting it from growing on the distance side. And you have to think about some of these athletes' agents. You have to think about who's running these meets and why certain people don't get into meets. And the whole format is just like, it's such a losing formula, all of it. So I noticed the tone of my voice got like a pitch or two higher, but it's just such a snooze fest. Like, let the guys race, you know, and women.
And you know what? I see your point. Like, I love obviously watching people run fast, but there's something special how, you know, they don't have paces in the Olympics and the World Championships, and that's just about winning. That's about winning the actual race. There's something cool about that does get lost when, you know, you're at a meet in Boston in January and there's, you know, 75 people breaking 4 minutes in the mile. It does kind of get the point. All right, like it's fast, and you don't care whether you're 6th place, 8th place, like 1st place. It just doesn't matter. So there is definitely losing that component of let's race, because it's almost like there is no more strategy. It's just run as fast as you can for the whole race.
You know, and the Penn Relay, you know, thing excluded, I do tend to agree that we are losing racing as a part of track and field, especially in distance running. You know, I did not like the Penn Relays finish because to me, there's also something about the best going out and being the best, right? Because that wasn't a rabbit situation. That was a situation where teams were going. There were 3 teams up there that were running really well, and it would have been a fantastic finish with their anchor legs because there were still 3 guys, and they talked about it. We had a 356 guy, a 350, all of them sub 4. So it would have been a beautiful finish. And I just thought that hurt the spirit of the sport to be able to slow down and let 9 teams get in. Villanova had no business winning that. Like, we could be honest. Great for them for winning it, but they had no business winning it. So I didn't like that aspect, but I do agree with what you're saying, where I think there is a time and a place for time trialing. And I think that could be something where the sport should revamp, right? Where say we have X amount of meets where here's your time trials. Here's where we will have rabbits at these meets. You want to come run fast, these are the meets to do it at, but no more rabbits at other meets. If you want to send out an individual athlete from your team to go try and set a pace, fine. They're not real pacers. They're going to do what they want to do. They could stay in. That's been a part of running forever, right? We do strategy that we work as a team and we do those things. But I tend to agree with you. The time trialing is getting a little ridiculous where it is diluting the 4-minute mile. It is diluting the sub 150, 800. And, you know, these types of things are just not special on a lot of levels when they really should be. And I think we're going to see a lot more broken athletes at really quicker ages because of these needs. So I tend to agree with you. I'd like racing a lot more because honestly, with the way I ran too, I was a kicker. Where is a kicker in this day and age? What do you do? Like, what do? You can't just sit and kick anymore. That's not a thing because there is no race strategy. If you're not willing to go out and run run like crazy, then you're screwed. So I tend to agree with you, Dave. You're spot on. Outside of Penn Relays, I hated that, but everything I said was true.
They were on pace. They were on pace to run fast, and it slowed up. So I get it, but I was sitting there with a group of people like, who do you think has this? Who do you think? And it was just the jockeying for position. And that's like a long race, 4 by mile is a long race. But like, could you imagine a 1500 where like there was some runner who like through 800 meters, you weren't allowed to pass him. And then he just stepped off the track and then like let the games begin. And like people just going at each other, like F1 and NASCAR and like the times are irrelevant. Like, whether it's a 30-minute and 2, like times don't mean anything. Nobody cares about times. They only care about, oh, so and so, like the Pepsi team took second, like that was insane. They came from 10th to second, and now they're like in the points. They moved up to first, and like, oh my God, this sets them up for such a great position. Like, those are the types of things that if we start to think about, like, I believe, is distance running, even with the coolest circuit, is that ever going to be like on the scale of NFL and NBA?
No.
I don't think so. But if you went to 6 locations, I mean, could you imagine if you had like a circuit around Times Square and they were like racing and there were like thousands of people out there just going wild for some guy winning $25,000? Like, oh my, and could you imagine the content and the video stuff that would come out of that? It would be so, and if you had the opportunity to race in one of the opening sections prior to that and you stayed and you watched someone run on that same course, like, I don't know if that's the answer, but like, those are the types of things that like really excite my partner and I. It's a formula that works, I believe.
I also like what you said earlier, because Clayton Murphy brought up last week. He said a big problem with track too is that it's multiple sports within one sport. You have your weights, you have your sprinters, you have your distance runners, you have your jumpers. So like the problem is you can't make everyone happy. So it's very hard to keep that continuity with every single athlete.
Yeah, it's true. And like another thing we tried, like there was a lot of back and forth between 2 long jumpers recently. I don't know if you've been following it with Tara Davis and Quenisha Burks. And, we threw out a lot of money to both of them to try to get them to come to our track night meet. And
I love it.
One of them was in and one of them wasn't. And like, could you imagine a 1v1 matchup with 30 minutes of dedicated video and like a little bit of trash talking? And
Curley versus Jacobs is great on Twitter. I love it.
That event also almost happened at our meet, but Fred Curley had an obligation to be in Japan. I kid you guys not. One side agreed to do it. Those 1v1 matchups, I think we're like pretty close to seeing that type of movement. And there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff with certain groups that are trying to make that happen, and it's exciting. And if you could bet on it, I mean, and like I think the matchup, I think that like the record is the biggest thing. Like to be able to follow like someone is 4-3 or they're racing for $100,000 or like something that gets people out of their seat. And
listen, I'm old enough to remember Donovan Bailey versus Michael Johnson for 150 meters. It was on NBC. It was like a 15-minute window. It sucks that Johnson pulled up halfway through, but like that was huge. Like that was on NBC, like a Saturday, like 5:30. People were tuned in, and it was just a short, quick 1v1. They made a special track that had the curve and the straightaway for 150 meters. It was awesome. Like people were watching that. Like we need more people talking trash, and I do tend to think that does occur more in the sprints or the jumps than it would for longer distance.
So, Dave, I just thought of a great gimmick race that I think you should put on. And I think it's a combination of your 10K elimination type of thing, plus the pacer thing that you were just talking about. Have a bunch of guys, start with 30 guys on the track or whoever. Have them have a pacer, bring them around for like 400, 800 meters. That pacer goes off. They have to do an all-out mile. After that mile's done, then the top, the last 10 knocked off. You're out. And then they line them up in lines of 3s. Top 3, get up here, do another 400, boom, hit another mile. 10 more gone once that's done. Like, that could be interesting because, like you said, there would be jockeying. No one would go hard early. And then that last 4, everyone will be going balls deep. Oh, okay, but now we're not done racing. Got to leave something in the tank because now here's our pacer to come on for 800. We got to do another mile. I think that would be lots of fun.
And if you pitch that to anyone in the the track circle, the people that are making these decisions, they laugh at you. But you know what? Like, I think it's cool. Like,
you could take those sub elites too. You don't have to get your elite 10 and 5K guys. You can get your sub elite 10K guys that would eat that up and say, hey guys, here's a $5,000 prize at the end of the tunnel. Go race.
I think it's cool. Hard mile followed by every lap you eliminate another. I mean,
it doesn't have to be 10, but you'll figure out a number. And I think like do it in NASCAR style where, okay, that position also matters because now you're going to line up in lines of threes and you're going to have to run on a pacer in a straight line in lines of threes. And when they start, you got to stagger a little and give like that. You get benefits for your places.
Yeah. I mean, I think stuff like that is cool. I do think, something like that could work, but a 10K outside of a championship window, again, I understand that you could really give a lot of information as to the background of each runner, but I think needs to be something to hook in the my mom or dad would be like, all right, go with this. Like,
can we crowdfund for prize money, or is that something that USATF won't do for any of these like events? Cause I know they said, could you like crowdfund for that type of event that we were just talking about to get a legitimate prize?
We could all like come up with an idea, crowd fund $20,000, and we could go do it at a track in another 6 weeks, and we can get a live stream. And absolutely, why not? Why not? USATF generally gives the sanctioning for these events, but like, why does it have to be sanctioned? It doesn't have to be sanctioned. And a lot of coaches might go, I'm not having my athlete do that, but like, you're going to tell me you're not going to have your athlete go out there and do that for $5,000 or $10,000. Like your athlete couldn't use that money.
Yeah.
So
let's do it. All you gotta do is the Talking in Ovals shout out. I don't even need the credit. All I want it to be is the Talking in Ovals like benefit, like trials and miles. But here's the Talking in Ovals 10K elimination race. Boom, that's it.
But that's the type of thinking that I believe will get more eyeballs on this sport, which I think ultimately is what this conversation is leading to. Is how to get more people excited about it versus just this very traditional format.
And it's funny because it's amazing how many guests that we have that are diehard, either in the sport now or were in the sport or just love the sport, talk about it's boring. It's boring to watch some of these meets. Like we need to do something. Nobody wants to watch, like trials and trials and trials of things. I mean, you have to have it for certain meets, but like that doesn't have to be on TV.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say is, having been involved in the high school world for a little bit, is that the high school track landscape seems to be very healthy right now. It's like the viewership numbers I gave you from the YouTube meet, like those are not fabricated. There's hundreds of thousands of people watching, and I get it. Like there's families and the numbers. There's more participants, but we just lose that. How many people do you come across in your life where you're like, they're like, yeah, I did cross country one season, or I did track one season. Yeah. Like, it's a very relatable thing. And like, it just like we get to college, a lot of people don't run, and then they're just out of the sport.
I think the thing is, though, there's teams to root for at the high school level, right? Like I'm from Manchester, Jersey. He's from Toms River. You're from West Orange. Like we have teams to root for. Then we go to college, Rucker, whatever, and we still root. Pro level, there's no teams. And we don't even highlight like training groups. Like we don't even highlight training groups. Like UFC does a good job of that. Like they train with this UFC guy and that one, they do training groups. Like we don't even do that. So there's not even that team aspect of enjoying that. Like Nick Simmons did a great job with Brooks Beast. Everyone knew who Brooks Beast was for a little bit because he made sure that everyone knew there was a Brooks Beast in this race. This was our training group. Like, but we don't see that. Now I think that's part of the drop off because there is nothing to relate back to for a person. Like there's no team. There's nothing, no one's like pointing to their chest when they go across like they would in a college or a high school level. And there's also a guarantee of some athletes being at some races, right? Where there is, again, we talked about it before. We don't know when athletes are going to run at the pro level, what race they're really going to run. So the promotion is a little bit different there as well.
Yeah. But if you had I don't know the answer. If you had Clayton Murphy, who was, the Pepsi or the Coca-Cola racing team, and it was him and Bryce and and you had this like all-star team, and they were competing in this circuit and they were using team tag. I mean,
yeah, Cooper T or something like that. Throw those three together and just let them go to work.
Yeah, exactly. Like I understand that like another issue I think is shoe companies are absolutely. Like they have full control over the sport, like one specifically. And you just how do you follow when you just see all these jerseys of people wearing the same thing? Like like you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Like you want them to wear that because they are representing you and you're paying them money, but like nobody gets it. They're just like, okay, you guys all run for Nike. Like, is this the Nike team? Like,
yeah,
no.
exactly. We were watching A Meet the other day, and my dad's like, so they're both wearing the same uniform. So the teammates, I'm like, no, they don't even train together. They have nothing to do with each other. They're just both sponsored by Nike or Adidas, but they know nothing about each other. They don't train together. So that part does definitely get confusing, Or what about having teams from certain like people like a Northeast team, and it's people who either went to high school here or went to college here that have a little familiar with that area.
Tough.
It is tough, yeah. There's
just so much wrong with the sport, and I think we're three guys trying to figure it out and make it right. And I really appreciate, Dave, what you're doing over there, actually putting your money where your mouth is and running meets and things like that. Like, that's not easy to do, and you're certainly trying to make a big dent in the sport. And I think you are, and I think you're going to, because your meets have big names, and putting money on the line is really big, because we know we have amazing track athletes that should be millionaires. They should be rubbing elbows with all the big name athletes, and they don't. They're scrounging in hotel rooms and hopefully getting sanctioned by USATF to hopefully run that race to get a better ranking. It's kind of ridiculous the way our athletes are treated.
I agree. And just to your point about the like recognizing jerseys, the second that they all wear USA and they're in an Olympic situation, everybody gets it. Yep. Everybody gets it. Like, there's no like what's on the line. There's a lot on the line. But unfortunately, that's 1 week out of every 4 years. And there just needs to be, there just needs to be a new fresh approach. So, totally agree with you guys.
It's like soccer too, that's probably like our fifth or sixth biggest sport here in the States. But World Cup time, everyone loves it. It's the same thing as almost track in that sense.
I mean, and you have a lot of soccer fans that like English Premier. They don't like American soccer, but a lot of soccer fans here. I'm an EPL fan. I like Man City. I like the Red Bulls. I don't follow them. I follow Man City. So it is similar. I do agree. But unfortunately, Dave, we have to wrap this up. This was a fantastic and informative show, dude.
Oh, yeah. I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's fun to like kind of think these things out loud and not just, keep them in my head. It's nice also that you guys are like actively pursuing these ideas. You have really good guests on that are like in the thick of things as athletes. And so like keep asking those questions as you guys are doing, because it's like, we're not gonna get anywhere by just complaining on Twitter, which I also do sometimes, but
we all do.
Yes,
totally. So thank you.
Yep. Once again, he is Dave Alfano. We talked a whole bunch about the Trials of Miles meets. Go to trialsofmilesracing.com. Go look up when their events are going to be there. Support them. Shout them out. Tell your friends to go, because, if you are a fan of this sport and you want to grow the sport, you got to start dragging your friends out to going to these meets. If they are local, start paying for these events, because that's the only way that we are going to grow, is if we start to support the people that are doing these types of things. Hyatt, do you have anything else to say before we get out of here?
No, it's just great seeing people who have been in the sport for most of their adult life, just trying to always give back. And I just love talking to anybody who wants to talk about what we can do to better this sport that we all love. All we want is for high quality meets, athletes to get paid, and for everyone to just have a place, and for the sport to just grow and evolve. So thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you.
So once again, this Talking Nobles. You like what you heard? Like, share, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Find us on the socials at Talking Nobles. Go search us everywhere. We will be there, and we will be back next week with another amazing guest. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. So long.